Hi, I'm Bob Ethington.
And I'm Nick Nicholas.
And this is From Akron and Beyond. Well, hi, folks. On this episode, our special guest is a guy who's been kind of a fixture in Akron music for a number of years. I'm trying to figure out how many years, but we'll figure that out today. That'll be one of the many revelations on this episode. Our guest is Ryan Humbert, and as mentioned, he's made a lot of music, played a lot of shows, done a lot of original stuff, covered a lot of great songs, and I think at heart it was always something of a honky tonk country boy, and that has kind of finally come to the fore with his current band, the Shootouts, who are reaching new heights of success and are just they're awesome. So we'll be definitely talking about that. But before we get to any of that stuff, hi Ryan, how's it going?
How are you guys?
We are good.
Ryan, good. You have to be the hardest working musician, man. I mean, over the last 10 years, I've gone to a winery, and there he is doing got a special fundraiser for the Civic Theater. There you are.
Yeah.
And then putting everything together for helping with get this station going. And,
sure.
And I mean, just. You work your butt off.
I
man.
appreciate that. I mean, that's the old Rust Belt work ethic, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and I come from a long line of hard workers as well. My dad and my grandpa, and we're kind of in that mindset, for better or worse, frankly. That it's kind of like you're not happy unless you're working. But
right.
But I also enjoy it. I also really believe that life is way too short to do something that you don't like.
Mm-hmm.
And I've over the last decade I've had a lot of loss, and it really helps you kind of set your perspective on what really matters. And it could end for any of us tomorrow, right? So why not do something that you enjoy, that you love? And I love working.
And coming from a small town, all you really have is your reputation, and your name. You've helped so many people over the years.
Well, I appreciate that. It's just for a love of it. I mean, a lot of the artists that I've worked with, Tracy Thomas or Mark Lee Shannon, J.D. Eicher, a lot of the different bands I've worked with through 330 Day at the summit here. It's really because I just enjoy it. I enjoy music. I enjoy working with other creative people. When it comes to producing some of the records that I've produced, it allows me to be creative in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I appreciate that, and it's something that's fun. I really love being on the other side of the stage too every once in a while.
Now, are you from Akron?
I'm actually from the southern Akron, North Canton neck of the woods. I went to green schools, and but my family is largely from the North Canton area. But spent a lot of time in Akron growing up. The first time I ever stepped foot on stage anywhere, I had just learned how to play guitar. I was 17 years old, and it was at the original North Side.
Oh, okay.
It was an open mic night. I think Mike Lenz was maybe running it or somebody like that.
Still there.
Still around. And that was the first time I ever stepped foot on stage. Me and a couple friends from high school, we had a terrible band, and it was just two acoustic guitars and another guy who couldn't play acoustic guitar, so he used the back of it for percussion. And that was it. And we played 5 cover songs, and a bunch of our friends came up. No, none of us could even drink. You know?
Right.
But I've always, Akron has really more so than Cleveland or Canton has really been kind of my musical home.
Mm-hmm. So let's go back to you're saying when you started playing guitar somewhere 15, 16, somewhere around that. What was the first music that you responded to? Do you remember hearing stuff on the radio?
Yeah.
Did you have siblings that turned you on to music?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a wide variety of ways that people get into it in the first place.
Yeah. So
get hooked.
It's funny because I kind of came to it, and it's funny you mentioned kind of the country side of things too. Mm-hmm. When I was growing up, I had music coming at me from a couple directions. It was my dad, who is a big music lover. I mean, he to this day he's a huge music fan, music buff. But he would be at work, and I would go down into the basement, and I would root through his collection, and I would listen to the Flying Burrito Brothers, and I would listen to Waylon Jennings and Dan Fogelberg and the Eagles and all this stuff he had down there in the basement. And I would take it and listen to it. Then my mom, who was not, she loved music, but she wasn't really a music nerd like any of us here at the Summit, and or any of us in this room, as a matter of fact. And she was listening to country radio when she was driving me to like soccer practice and baseball and stuff. But that was back when country radio was still pretty damn good, and you could hear Patty Loveless, George Strait, Dwight Yoakam, the Mavericks, Radney Foster. I mean, these artists were still being played on regular country radio.
Right.
And it was probably the tail end of like the great credibility scare that Steve Earle likes to call it, because Nashville was signing more singer-songwriters for a period of time and taking more risks. And I was just a kid, but all that stuff stuck. I don't get much of my musical influence from my mom, but two of my all-time favorite bands, the Mavericks and Dwight Yoakam, I got from her because she was big fans. So, and then my grandpa, when I was learning how to play guitar, I would go over to his house, and we would do old country gospel songs or Johnny Cash songs, or I would even teach him Gillian Welch songs. I would be playing them, and I'd be like, "You should sing this song, Grandpa." And so I was always really, my influences always were in the kind of country Americana, country rock world.
Right.
And then one day I heard a record that I was still in high school, about 16. I heard a record that just completely changed my life, and it's "Car Wheels on a Gravel Road" by Lucinda Williams.
Oh, that's one of my favorites, man.
And I think I was just at the right age, and it was the right record at the right time. It could have been a different record, but that record to me was a little bit country, a little bit rock, a little bit folk, a little bit blues.
Great words.
Yeah, amazing lyrics.
Yeah.
And it just, and a voice that was left to center. And it just, everything kind of made sense. And all of a sudden I thought, well, what is this? This is music that's covering all these bases in one. And why aren't I hearing this? Why am I not hearing this on the radio? Or where, and all of a sudden I just started deep diving.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, I'm listening to Steve Earle and Bob Dylan and Emmylou Harris, and it was a rabbit hole.
Yeah, right.
Didn't you see Lucinda at that time, Ron?
I did, the tour for that album. At the Beach.
I did. I saw her at. It was at the Odeon. Well, maybe she was at both, but I saw her at the Odeon on the Car Wheels tour, and she had Kenny Vaughan and John Jackson in her band.
Right.
John Jackson ended up playing on a record of mine, but wow. I got to meet her and talk to her, and I was just a high schooler, but I was a huge Lucinda fan,
Yeah.
And that was it. I heard the song "Can't Let Go" on that album, and I said, man, I want to play guitar like that.
Yeah.
Now, I still can't play guitar like that, but that was the song that did it for me, and that was the record as a whole.
Yeah.
One last little Lucinda tidbit. I bought her new album that just came out. She had this illness,
she
stroke,
had a stroke,
I think. And man, it's like when Dylan's album came out after, his heart problem,
Yeah.
This is on par with that. I mean, it's very personal.
It's a wonderful album. Yeah, she. I've followed her and stuck with her the whole time. I mean, through every record, and I've seen her probably 20 times and met her half a dozen, and I have a guitar that I've had autographed by folks that I've met that have been big influences. Doesn't leave the house very often anymore. But and at this point, it's Nick Lowe, Chrissie Hynde, Elvis Costello, Marty Stuart, Ray Benson. But Lucinda was one of the first to sign it for me.
Yeah, wow. That's very cool.
Yeah.
It's funny how I think that music has, when people really react strongly to music, as a musician or as just a super music geek who just loves listening and going to shows or whatever, I'm always struck by that kind of sort of organic way it tends to work, right? I mean, it tends to be like one artist leads to another.
Oh, for sure.
One record, one song, and then the way you described, like, how did she do this on the Lucinda Williams Car Wheels? It's like, wow, how is she getting that sound? And then you see who's playing on the album, and then what else have they, And
I'll tell you what, I still
liner notes are dangerous.
Yeah, well, right, and I mean, I still enjoy like a lot of us here at the Summit, I still enjoy physical media because I want to see who played and who produced and who mixed. And
me too.
It's harder to find that information if you don't have the physical product.
Right.
You know, I went down so many rabbit holes because of that. And people that I ended up working with on solo records or Shootouts records, I discovered them because of the liner notes.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it's important. And also those people that are doing the work, they deserve the credit.
Yeah.
You know, they deserve to be recognized for the hard work.
You know, this is a little off topic. We'll get back very quickly, but you're reminding me when you're saying that, you know, you look at the record business now and like, the record business for like classical music is essentially dead.
Yeah.
And the thing is that I always remember Charles Schultz, you know, Peanuts fame. I remember someone asked him, well, you obviously love classical music. How did you learn about it? And he said, oh, just reading the liner notes on albums.
Yeah.
When I'd buy a record, I just read about it. And that's how I learned about the composer and the conductor and all this. And similarly, although jazz is doing a little better in the record department or recording department, I mean, any true jazz fan wants to know exactly who's on bass, who's on drums. You know, that's half of it. You know, I mean,
well, and some of it too is once you get so immersed in any genre, I don't care what it is, you start recognizing like, boy, that sure sounds like a you know, XYZ on the drums,
right?
Or boy, this really sounds like it was produced by Jeff Lynne or whatever,
right?
And then it's fun to go and figure it out.
Yeah.
You know? See how close you got.
So you're now you've got this family background and listening and going to shows and stuff. You start playing guitar on your own and put together your first band. I couldn't help but think that I would be the guy who was drumming on the guitar in that band. But so how? I mean, it seemed you explain how your career has kind of grown because it's interesting to me, and I've known you for quite a long time.
Sure.
But I have to admit, at some weird level, it's kind of like Ryan Humbert has always been here.
Yeah. I tell you what, and
I'm not really sure, you know, Nick, I can talk about his origin story. I don't really, you know.
I take that as a compliment. I started making records in like 2003, 2004. I was just a baby. I didn't, you know, I made 2 records that long out of print. That were just me figuring out who the hell I was and working with a lot of area musicians and you know, there were some fun moments there and all that stuff. And we even took some of those songs and re-recorded them once I started making bigger records. But basically 2008 was what I would like to consider the start, because went to Nashville, made a record called Old Souls, New Shoes, and worked with just an amazing crew of people. We had the drummer for the Counting Crows. We had Audley Freed from Sheryl Crow's band on guitar. Daniel Tashin, who ended up producing the big hit records for Casey Musgraves. He was all over the record. You know, just a great crew of folks.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the start of my like solo singer-songwriter years.
Yeah.
And
how do you put something like that together?
A lot of money.
Oh,
a lot of money. Took me a while to pay that off. But you know, some of that same thing was like, well, man, who produced this record? Who produced that record? And I was going to work, actually, a gentleman by the name of Ray Kennedy, who did all the Car Wheels on a Gravel Road and Steve Earle stuff. We had a relationship for about a year where we had talked about making a record together. And every time we'd get close, he would call me like, I have bad news. And I said, what's that? And he said, well, Ray Davies just called and I'm going to, you know, to the UK to make a record with him now.
Yeah.
Or the next one was, well, shoot, now all of a sudden Steve Earle's bringing Joan Baez in and I got to do that record. You know, like we just kept getting kind of back-burnered. And I get it. You know, I would have done the same thing.
Yeah.
But we ended up just saying like, you know what, we're going to go over here and do something different instead. And that became the Old Souls record. And then from there, and that record did pretty well on a local, regional level for us. But frankly, we went so over budget that we ran out of cash to really promote it the right way. And also, I was a baby. I didn't know how to promote a record the right way, you know? And so then after that came 2012's album, Sometimes the Game Plays You, 2014's Halfway Home, just solo records that I had made, singer-songwriter records. Was writing songs with Tracy Thomas by that point, who I met through the Summit here. Emily Bates, my longtime backing vocalist and one of my best friends. You know, she'd already been in the fold for a while. So really started doing that singer-songwriter stuff, and really, that's really, I would say, probably when I kind of started I don't know, having more name recognition in the area.
Mm-hmm.
But by that point, I produced a record for Tracy Thomas that I look back at now and I'm like, what was I doing? Like, how did I even get this job being in charge of this record? She still loves the record, you know, and people still talk about that record. But, you know, I got to make a couple records for her. I think we did 3 records together with Tracy. And everyone got a little better as I kind of figured out what I was doing. And, you know, Tracy was nice to kind of trust me with that. And I've never written more songs with another human than Tracy Thomas.
Yeah.
I think we've written 30-some songs together.
Wow.
Never knew that.
Yeah, and a lot of, there's been, if you go back to, I think, Queen of Nothing, what's the record before that? Ghost Town, and there was a lot of co-writes on both those records.
Yeah.
And then I took some of those songs and did my own versions of them on some of the solo records. I have a solo record called Halfway Home that might as well have not been released. It's long, the same arduous story that a lot of people have, label issues.
Right, yeah.
And it got out. There's some copies of it and stuff, but I did a handful of the songs that we co-wrote there. And then it was 2012. No, it was 2015, where Brian Poston and I, 2014 we met, 2015 we finally decided to put our money where our mouth was, because one of the things that we bonded over was our love of real country music. And all the stuff that I had listened to that I kind of put to the side while doing the kind of the singer-songwriter stuff.
Yeah.
I think I was just at an age and a point where I was like, I don't care what anybody thinks anymore. I just want to, let's just go have fun.
Right. Play what you want to play.
And that's where the Shootouts started, and here we are.
Yeah, yeah.
2015?
2015 is when we started the Shootouts. October, we played our first show in October, I think it was like October 10th, somewhere in there, 2015 at the old Euclid Tavern, which is no longer there.
Yeah.
That was our first show.
Okay.
Yeah. And, you know, it's funny because in a way, there are times where I wish that I would have come to the realization sooner that, like, hey, like, idiot, maybe you shouldn't ignore all your influences from early on or whatever. And I don't think I was, but I think I was definitely making music with my head as opposed to my heart for a few years. And I'm very proud of those records. I think they turned out great, and there's some really high points there. And I also learned a lot, you know, and all of a sudden I was able to take all of the successes and failures and things that I had done wrong or things that I had done right, and I was able to take all of that and apply it to the Shootouts. Whereas maybe that wouldn't have happened, you know, sooner. Maybe, you know, and also it took meeting Brian, who is about he's about 8 years younger than me, and so that wouldn't have happened then either.
Right.
You know,
right.
so I am a believer in things happening for a reason, and maybe it just was that I had to get to a point where mentally I was prepared to really, you know, take all the things that I had learned and put it into this band.
Right. Right. This is From Akron and Beyond. I'm Bob Ethington with my co-host, Nick Nicholas, and our guest, Ryan Humbert. Now, Ryan, you mentioned going to Nashville, and I do have a question for you about that, because a couple years ago, I went down to Nashville with my wife just on vacation, really, check it out. And one thing that struck me, and again, this is like a couple years ago, but one thing that really struck me was, and it struck me is, on the one hand kind of awesome, and on the other hand kind of sad, is that there are so many people down there playing music.
Oh, sure.
And you go walking up and down the streets, and every bar, every street corner has people that are playing, and there's a lot of talent there. But there's so much, and there's so that it almost, I mean, it just struck me that a lot of these people are never going to get anywhere.
And they're good.
They're good, but it's just, you know, and a lot of people who are, I mean, they're kind of almost overtly too much playing the role, you know, like they're, you know, playing Hank Williams songs and stuff like that, which is, hey.
Or vice versa, or they're trying to be the next Luke Bryan.
Right.
Which is, you see a lot of down there, that type of thing.
Right. So I'm curious about your approach to Nashville, because it seems like it worked.
Got plenty. Well, yes and no. I mean, again, learning experience, right? I mean, I basically lived there when I was making that Old Souls record, and more or less went into debt because just spending money living there as well as making that record, and it was kind of a kitchen sink record, and we had string section, you know, on stuff, and I mean, it was a great record, and I'm proud of that record, but it cost a lot, and but the one thing I figured out really quickly while I was living there is that I am just another white male singer-songwriter in a sea of thousands and thousands of white male singer-songwriters there.
Right.
And after living there for about a year and a half, I came home because I realized it would be better to curate the audience from, where I started outward,
right,
as opposed to going down there and trying to start over again. Right. Nashville's a hard town to play music in unless you already have something going on, right? Like, we've had success down there with the Shootouts, but by that point, we'd already started making a name for ourselves outside of Nashville.
Right.
And I think that, that city can certainly eat people up. I mean, it's not like any other. I mean, New York and LA, any entertainment town's the same way.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's exclusive to musicians.
Yeah. I remember years ago there was a band, probably 25 years or more ago, in Akron called something and the Nashville Bound. I wonder if they ever made it.
They ever made it down there. And so I'll tell you what, at this point now, we've got so many friends down there, and we work down there a lot. I've made multiple records down there. I enjoy I love that town. I really do. And if I needed to move there, I would. But I'm quite happy being based out of northeastern Ohio and just going down there as needed. We're usually there somewhere between 3 and 6 times a year right now.
Yeah.
It's a great city. It's grown immensely.
I was going to say,
a bit of a detriment.
Yeah, that's the impression I have about it.
Well, I'm sure anybody you talk to that lives there would tell you.
Right.
It's not the same city it was in 2008. Now, you don't want to sound like some sort of fuddy-duddy either, it's not the same town I knew. But a lot of the growth has been tourist-based, and there's pluses and minuses to that.
Right.
Without getting too much into detail, there's certain parts of that has helped the city immensely, and there's certain parts of that where you kind of shake your head.
Well, when we were there, I went to the Ernest Tubb record shop, which I was excited. And then it was like 2 or 3 months afterwards, it closed.
Really?
Yeah. And it was, it was the same thing that happens, like you say, Ryan, like in New York or whatever, where it's just like the property's getting so expensive there that they can sell those buildings and turn them into, condominiums or whatever, and make a lot more money. And so,
there's a lot of gentrification going on in Nashville.
Yes.
I mean, all over town. Not even just downtown. You go to East Nashville, which has always been a very cool, hip part of town, and always really great, places to dine and little coffee shops and record stores and stuff. It's just, now all of that stuff is, if it's still there, it's surrounded by condos.
Right. Yeah.
So you just got to know where to go still. I mean, it's still a wonderful city. I don't mean to talk negatively about it because I love it there. I have a feeling, I think we're probably going to make our next record down there. I mean, we're going to be down there in September for a week for Americana Fest.
Yeah.
I like spending time in that city a lot. It's just it's like with anything, things change.
Sure.
You got to be okay with it.
Oh, it was fun. I had a great time when you were there, but it was just...
Yeah, and I always have a good time, too. It's just funny because I had some great times down there, over the last 15 years, and... it's just funny because I go back now and I look at some of those places we went to and they're either gone or it's different.
Right.
But that's life.
Yeah,
Akron's no different.
Right, exactly.
Any town that is it. You want to see these towns. I mean, Akron. I have such a love for Akron. I always have. It's been, like I said, kind of a home base for us. You want to see the growth. You want to see Main Street get redone. You want to see these things happening to continue to bring life back to these cities, these small towns that really deserve a chance. So you have to be okay with change.
Right. Or if it's not changing, it's dying, right?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, people get bored nowadays pretty easily.
Right.
So,
Right. So let's start talking about Shootouts now. Am I correct? Do you have 3 albums?
3 albums, yeah.
Okay.
We put our first one came out in 2019, second one in 2020. Okay. I'm sorry, 2021, April of 2021. And the newest one, Stampede, came out in February of this year.
So you guys had actually been together for
a few years before
any records. Okay.
Yeah, and we started, like I said, in late 2015. Originally, the Shootouts was meant to be a cover band. It was just meant to be fun. We were gonna, but I'm also, I think you guys both know me well enough to know that, like, my motto is kind of anything worth doing is worth overdoing. And so we went into the first show with the Western attire, with the name, with the logo, with everything. Yeah. And I wanted to do it right, if we were going to do it. But we went into that first show covering Waylon Jennings and Hank Williams and BR 549 and Marty Stuart and Tom T. Hall. I mean, we weren't covering the Jason Aldeans of the world,
right?
And so it was at that very first show at Euclid Tavern. I remember turning around and on stage and thinking, like, this makes sense. This is it. This is what I should have been doing or should be doing.
Yeah.
And it was like a bolt of lightning, and it just all of a sudden everything kind of clicked, and it was like, okay, all that stuff I learned before, all the mistakes, all the successes. Now I know what to do with it.
Right.
And I just felt like we were onto something. I'm like, there's not a lot of folks doing this.
Right.
Not a lot of folks doing it well.
Yeah.
Hopefully we are. I mean, you just basically, I just thought, like, I think we're on to something here, and I think this is worth doubling down on.
Yeah.
And that's what I did.
I remember when we did that show with you outdoors at, at
the university.
Yeah, at university, and you had the attire and everything.
Yeah.
It was a good show, but that was pretty early on.
It was. We were still doing mostly covers at that. We had a longer name too. The original name of the band, trying to pay tribute to Buck Owens and the Buckaroos, Merle Haggard and the Strangers, all that stuff, was Ernest Tubb and all that stuff was Shooter Sharp and the Shootouts. And it was just a made-up name, meant to be fun. The whole thing was meant to be fun.
Right.
And it still is, but it's, it quickly took on a life of its own that I've also been able to kind of help curate and shape a bit. And we did a show, we were thinking about shortening the name, and we did a show with Radney Foster, who's become a friend and mentor of the band. And he said, you ever think about just shortening the name to the Shootouts? And I said, well, it's funny you mentioned that. We've been talking about it. And he goes, I would do it. And we did, and never looked back. And so that was before our first record even came out. So it took us a minute to kind of be like, okay, I think we can go we should start doing original stuff. Let's go in a little slightly different direction. But by 2017, I mean, it was less than 2 years before we really kind of, I think we were in the studio in 2017 or 18, somewhere in there. So it, you might as well not even count 2015 because we started in October.
Yeah.
So 2016 and 17 were kind of getting our act together.
Right.
And then next thing you know, we're making our first record, and then it's been off and running ever since.
Yeah. Well, you guys are pulling it off great because, I mean, you guys are terrific to see live. And,
Thank you.
And the records are really good, too. I just have, I'm taking another one of my quick asides here. So Ryan mentions playing his first show with the Shootouts at the Euclid Tavern.
Yeah.
And did you ever play the Euclid Tavern, Nick?
No, I saw some great bands there over the years, and no.
I always thought that the restrooms at the Euclid Tavern was sort of like a sobriety test, because if you can actually get down those stairs and back up in one piece, you must be okay.
Oh yeah, and there was no.
They're all crooked and weird, and it's very odd.
It's funny, we always ask at every venue we play if there's a green room, and the reason why is not because we're a bunch of divas or care about any of that, but we just need a place we can change into the Western attire.
Yeah, right.
And at the Euclid Tavern, they had essentially a very small broom closet behind the stage that you loaded your gear into. That's where we changed before we went on stage that night. So yeah. We still try. We played a place in New Orleans recently that had no green room whatsoever, and so we used our band Ford Transit as the dressing room. So
all the stuff that you're doing. How do you still find time to do that great radio show that you do on Sundays?
I appreciate you asking about that. It's the Americana Roundup. It's here on the Summit FM. Every Sunday morning from 9 to 11 a.m. People can also stream it at the Summit's website on Sundays. I also have a 24/7 streaming channel of the Americana Roundup.
Really?
That is at AmericanaRoundup.com. I did that during the pandemic.
I've learned so much from that show.
I appreciate that. It's a labor of love. I just did my 263rd episode.
Whoa.
So you guys got to catch up.
Yeah.
But it's
I'm behind.
Yeah, a little behind there. But so it's it's funny. I mean, during the pandemic, I remember we had a team Zoom call, and Brad said, he goes, Ryan's the one who will be affected by this the least, because I've always done my show from my house. I'm going to let you guys in on a secret. All those folks listening out there, there are people who still think I'm here every Sunday morning doing that show, and it has never once been done from the Summit. But I do them all from home, or I've done them from hotel rooms in Mississippi and Atlanta and Michigan, and I just love doing it. It's at this point, after 200 and some episodes, I have it down. So I love it. I don't ever intend on giving that up. So it's like you said, it's a lot of fun. Just recently, I did some episodes on states and cities.
Oh, okay.
And the list of songs I was able to come up with was incredible. I did a whole show on states and a whole show on cities, and it was a blast. I still have fun doing it, and I still get feedback from listeners every Sunday. And the Summit, when people are doing membership drives, people are mentioning the show, and that means a lot. It's because it truly is a labor of love. I'm just spinning records that I like.
Yeah. It's funny. We had Myron Vernus on, who's a car collector, a major car collector.
World renowned,
yes. And we were talking about songs, that are all the songs that invoke cars, all the rock songs that invoke cars. And then after we did that show, Nick, I started thinking, you know what, though? I bet you there's 10 times more shows that invoke trains.
Well, what's funny? I did I did 2 weeks in a row of train songs.
Oh, yeah.
Did you really?
I did. Gosh, I've done some cool themes. I did trains. I did cars and driving. I did a whole episode on the state of Texas and all Texas songs. I did an Ohio episode. I've done a lot of fun. As a matter of fact, even around the last election that we had, I think 2020, I think it was, I did a whole episode of red songs, and then I did a whole episode of blue songs.
Oh, okay.
Not there was no political affiliation to the songs, just songs that had red in the title, or songs that there's so many different themes you can come up with, and some weeks there's no themes. It's just good music, new music, classic stuff. Whatever I'm listening to at the time.
Right.
But it's fun. I've always enjoyed sharing and learning about music from my friends and from other music nerds and lovers like myself.
Yeah.
That. I kind of get a kick out of sharing music with folks, and that's how I learn too, is listening to other stuff like that. So
I went on this, my wife and I went on this big road trip out west earlier in the year. And I am just enough of a music geek that I actually am like programming the music we're listening to by where we are.
Oh, sure.
So
that's awesome. I've done the same thing
so,
before.
So Memphis, it was Elvis and, Sun and Stax stuff. And then when we went through Texas, I kind of rediscovered Doug Somm and the Texas Tornadoes.
Yeah.
Man, that stuff is great.
Yeah,
I hadn't listened to it for years.
Good.
And there's a lot of good stuff there, too.
He's another example of an artist that should be way bigger than, or even in the history book, should be bigger. I know he's not around anymore, but there's a lot of artists like that, though, that you're like, how in the hell did they not get bigger? And, for whatever reason. I mean, Townes Van Zant's another one. I mean, of course, anybody...
He was self-destructive.
Well, and that's some of the problem with a lot of these folks. But, I mean, yes, of course, if you're a big music... fan, especially if you're in anywhere near the country rock Americana world, you're going to know who Townes Van Zandt is. But why wasn't he a bigger name?
Right.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of artists like that. That's a whole other episode.
Yeah.
Forgotten artists.
This is From Akron and Beyond. I am your host, Bob Ethington, with my co-host, Nick Nicholas, and our guest on this episode is Ryan Humbert of the Shootouts. Let's talk more about the Shootouts.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that I've often admired about you is your ability to network. I mean,
big time.
Some might say schmooze, but I'm going to go with the word network.
Whatever you call it.
But you truly are excellent at it, and it works. It's always a two-way street, and I'm very impressed with that. And the name Marty Stuart has come up, and I'm a huge fan of his.
Yeah.
And I think the Shootouts are kind of working in that tradition a little
For sure.
bit. You would agree?
Yeah, when we started the band, Marty and the Superlatives were one of our North Stars.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So how do you meet him? How does he end up playing on your latest album?
Gosh, I mean, first off, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, there's a lot of folks that are good at the music side of things and don't really, how do I say this politely, or aren't as good in the offstage things.
Oh yes, I know some of those people.
Don't we all? Yeah, the business side of things, and that was one thing that even before the Shootouts, but especially the Shootouts, I thought, I'm going to make sure that I have a handle on everything happening off stage as well. One of those things is relationship building. Now, in general, I would consider myself a people person. I like talking to people. I like making friends. I like finding out more about people and learning from each other. That's how I think a good friendship works, right? Whether it's a business relationship or just a casual friendship or whatever. But I think the one thing with the Shootouts is that that made it a little easier is that we definitely had a niche, right? Like, we had a wheelhouse that did not exist before the Shootouts, especially for me, right? Like, as I mentioned earlier, I was just one of a sea of male singer-songwriters, But with the Shootouts, all of a sudden, there was a lane that we lived in. And there was other people living in that lane that just made sense, right? So next thing you know, we're getting to open a couple shows for Marty Stuart. So that's how we met him. And we really brought our A game at those shows we did. And him and the band were, thankfully very impressed. And that's the start of that relationship. We were so thrilled with this new record, Stampede. We got to work with some of our, heroes. Guys like Marty, Ray Benson from Asleep at the Wheel produced the new album. And getting to work with him, we got to sing with Ray Benson on a track and work with all of Asleep at the Wheel. These are things that when we started this band, I could have never dreamed about, right? And here we are on one album working with Buddy Miller, Jim Lauderdale, Raul Malo of the Mavericks, Marty Stuart, Ray Benson, all of Asleep at the Wheel. This is something I wouldn't have ever thought would have been in the cards for us when we first started this band. I just enjoy getting to know people, and I also think that, especially from a business sense, that like I said, life's too short. It's nice to have friends that if I can call somebody and say, hey, I could really use some help, if they can't do it, they can point me in the right direction, and vice versa. I like being able to help my friends connect and do better in their careers or their lives or whatever it may be. I think it's just the product of I get it from my mom, man. She could talk to anybody. She was, she's no longer with us. She passed away in 2018, but she was just always very warm and inviting to people. And I know that there are even fans of the Shootouts that would come to shows and didn't know anybody. And I would say, hey, why don't you, I'd introduce my mom to them, and she would make them feel like, so. And my grandma's the same way. My sister's the same way. We just like getting to know people. And if at the end of the day that can be a relationship that is mutually beneficial from a business standpoint for both of you, then great. If not, that's okay too. So I don't know. There's no real trick to that. It's not like something I even. It's not like something that I intentionally do. I think it's just you try to be a good person, and hopefully. Good things will happen. Right.
Well,
absolutely.
Your relationship with Tracy Thomas is a perfect example of this. It's been very mutually beneficial.
I
know she has loved working with you.
I love Tracy Thomas, and and it's funny because, like with any good friend or anything like that, where there's a relationship. We could pick each other apart about things, but at the end of the day. I've learned so much from Tracy, and I think I think that she's learned some from me too. And I think that we kind of clicked from a creative standpoint, which is interesting because we didn't really have anything in common when we first met. There's nothing on paper that should have said these two should be good friends and working partners, but we just clicked, and that's another reason why I think it's good to to be willing to go shake people's hands. You just never know when something great is around the corner with somebody, and it could even be from a relationship standpoint, not just a business standpoint or whatever. Yeah. But I mean, I can't tell you how much I've learned from working with Tracy Thomas. I don't know if I'd be writing songs if it wasn't for her, because when I first met her and we started working on stuff together, it's when I started writing songs.
Right.
So I mean, and any of these folks I've had, I've worked with around here. I've learned stuff from Mark Lee Shannon. I've learned stuff from J.D. Eicher, and hopefully they've been able to take something away too.
Yeah. So we talk about the Shootouts. Who's in the band?
Yeah, so the band is made up of my longtime partner in crime, Emily Bates. We've just celebrated 20 years of singing together, which is pretty incredible. And we love working together, love singing together. We're like best friends.
Yeah.
And she's on harmony. She plays acoustic guitar as well at some of the shows. And then Brian Poston, when Brian and I met, we are the ones that kind of started the band, really. We're the original founders, and Brian is a monster. If you've ever seen him on stage, I mean, he acts like he's been playing guitar for 60 years. Or plays like he's been playing guitar for a million years. And he will tell you that he doesn't remember a time when he didn't play. His mom told us he started when he was 8. But he kind of does all that really fun, fast Albert Lee style guitar, and
no, he can really shred.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, not only can he shred, he knows when to not shred.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's I will always say it's more about what you don't play than what you do play.
Yeah, that's 100%. I mean, and I will underline that because
and then circle it and highlight it.
Yeah, because when I've seen you guys play, he'll do things and I'm like, man, that's amazing. But it's always exactly what the song requires and fits. And it's not like he's sitting there and just, running up and down the scales,
for sure.
All the time.
He's so tasteful.
Which is, to me, terribly boring.
And on top of it, he's a nice guy. He's a good guy, and we've become good friends, and I love working with him. And, I think that the band, it's funny because, sometimes you have bands where it's very clearly one person or very clearly, whatever. I really think that we are a sum of the parts, right? Like we've got Emily and I have that long history and bond and vocal blend together. And then we have Brian that kind of is able to help with arrangements and this incredible guitar player. And then I think when you put those three things together, that's kind of the main ingredients, right? We also have a fantastic rhythm section right now. Kevin McManus on bass guitar and sings some harmonies, and Mark Budo on drums, and they both bring something kind of exciting to the show as well. What I like about working with both those guys is that they're both when they're on stage, they you can tell they're having fun. They they're there because they believe in the music, and we're a pretty high energy band.
Yeah.
And, it just doesn't work if you've got one guy standing back there just going through the motions. Not to say there aren't some shows where, everybody, everybody has shows where they phone it in and they're lying if they tell you otherwise. Right. But I will tell you that with this band, those shows are very, very few and far between. I'm very lucky to play with these folks. And I also have another motto that I try to live by, that if you're the most talented person in your band, you're playing with the wrong people. Just to be able to have these folks, around me on stage, we're a bit of a family, and it's really been pretty special, and we've been able to play some pretty amazing shows. And
you guys have been touring quite a bit.
This year we've been in over 22 states so far.
Yeah.
And all of that is for the greater good of just trying to continue to push the Shootouts name and the brand and the music, and the new record Stampede has been very good to us. Spent 13 weeks in the Americana radio top 10.
Nice.
Which is incredible. To have the support of Americana radio was killer. We got to make our Grand Ole Opry debut February 24th, the same day the album came out. We just were back there again a few weeks ago. I will tell you that was the best night of my life, getting to make the debut there.
Yeah, sure.
It was just incredible to be able to be a part of that family now. And to have their endorsement. I mean, that means the world.
Yeah, well, when I had seen you guys, and I knew, you were doing some terrific stuff and things were going really well for you. But then when I heard you were playing the Grand Ole Opry, I'm like, whoa, okay.
They made it.
We leveled up a little bit, yeah.
Getting it.
That's like, I've told this story before on the show, but I like, like my late mother, I mean, she never really understood what I was doing when it came to music at all. But it was like, we played at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That she knew. That she could say, well, that's impressive.
Yeah.
We played at the Akron Civic. Well, that she knew. That was impressive. And so, you played the Grand Ole Opry. Okay. Enough said.
Yeah. I mean, and I'll tell you what, we'll keep doing it as long as they'll have us.
Sure.
I mean, I think we're part of that family now. And they've been so kind to us. So it's been so much fun. I can tell you that we've played a lot of stages, big and small, and there's nothing that sounds as good as it does on the Opry stage. They have it so dialed in and so perfected. Both experiences were just fantastic. We can't wait to go back.
Yeah.
And that was a big landmark for us.
Yeah.
I mean, to be able to say that we are now always forever going to be a part of that history.
Right.
And that's forever going to be a part of our history.
Right.
Gosh, I mean, it was emotional, really emotional.
Sure.
We don't take that for granted. And this has been a fun year. It's been a really good year. Releasing this record, we did our first official South by Southwest showcase.
Okay.
Did the Opry. We're down at the Ameripolitan Awards, down in Memphis at Graceland. I mean, we've played all over the place. We have an official Americana Fest showcase coming up in September. It's been a very good year, and every time, I mean, you guys know this, right? I mean, any band, you've got your wins and losses, and half the time you're checking up more losses than you are wins, and I think that's every band, even big bands. I mean, I think that's normal. But when you get a win like that, you get a win like getting to do the Opry on release day, or some of those things. I mean, that wipes out the rest of the losses, and it helps fuel you. Again, every time. I'm one of those guys that I'm always. I think I'm fueled by the loss category, right? But then when I get a win, then it's just like overdrive.
Yeah, right. All the sweeter. Yeah.
Even sweeter, right?
Yeah. Have you played the Ryman yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
Here's a funny story for you. I can't tell you the number of people that said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so proud of you guys. You got to play the Ryman." I said, "No. We played the Opry House."
Right. Yeah.
And they said, "Oh, is that the new one?" And I said, "Well, they built it in 1979."
Yeah.
So
it's not exactly
relatively
brand new,
I guess you could say. It was before I was born. So, but it's a beautiful building. The Ryman is a goal. I mean, that's one of our. We want to play. You've got a handful of venues. You want to. I want to play Red Rocks. I want to play the Ryman. Want to play. Some of those, the Fillmore. You have these rooms that you of course would like to play.
Right.
The Ryman's next for us. We're gunning for it. So it's.
I think you'll get there.
I would hope. I hope so, man. And it's. It would be an honor. I mean, or whether it's because we're there with the Opry, or whether we're there with somebody else, or whatever for whatever reason. That's going to be a special day too.
I have to ask you about the Opry because I've been there, and it seems like it's such a well-run show.
I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, it's almost like watching like a TV production, except it's just an actual live concert.
Well, but it is a TV production.
Well, it is a TV
sometimes
too.
Yeah,
and it's on the radio.
It's on the radio.
It's just the way that everything goes from one to the next. There's so little downtime.
No, there's no downtime.
If any, right? Yeah,
it is such a well-oiled machine. Well, first off, right now they're doing that show in the summer here. They're doing that show 5 times a week. I think it is. They're doing 4 or 5 times a week. They're doing Sunday shows now too, which they don't typically do in the off season. Not all of them are on TV. Of course, Saturday night is televised. There might be one other one that's televised, but every one of them is on WSM radio still.
Right.
It is the longest running radio show in American history.
Yeah.
So coming up on 100 years.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So they've had some time to figure it out,
Right.
And I will tell you, it is a well-oiled machine. But here's the cool thing too. When we walked in, when we were gearing up for that, I was nervous about being nervous, right? Like, I'm like, God, are we going to walk in there and be like, is it going to be emotional? Is it going to be, I even had them, but they do this at every show anyway, but if you want it, they have a teleprompter. It's the size of this room. It's way on the back wall, and it's a giant TV, and they have all the lyrics for songs up there. I sent them the lyrics for our songs because I thought, what if, it could be emotional? I don't know. Like, that's just, I need, probably be a good idea to have them. Never needed them.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, we walked into that building that first time, and whatever weird fears or emotion or whatever that we thought was going to happen, it just melted away. It was really, I don't even know how to describe it, you guys. It was so strange because all of us thought we were going to be nervous, and none of us were nervous at all. It was like, okay, we're here. We're meant to be here for whatever reason.
Right.
And even we walked out on that stage. I mean, and we probably had 300-400 people that came to see us that night. That came from all over the country. A lot of people from Akron, even. Sure, of course. And right when we walked on the stage, before they even introduced us, while they were showing some commercial, the crowd started, cheering us up. And I stood there for a second in the dark, and I just looked around. And I just took it in. And the lights went up, and we were ready to roll. I mean, I don't remember any of it. It was one of those things, but it definitely. There's something about the professionalism there, as well as just the warmth. I mean, everybody that works there, kind as can be, they're there to make a good show, but they're also there to make you comfortable so that you help put on a good show. Right. And it was incredible. Both times that we've been there now here this year, I just cannot say enough good things about everybody who works there. The sound system is incredible. They have that show. They have it down. It's so tight. And there is no downtime. But it really is such a well-oiled machine. And I guess if you're first off, you're an institution like the Grand Ole Opry. You have a massive crew, and you're doing a show 4 nights a week. You're going to figure it out. Right?
Yeah. It's a large room.
Over 4,000 people.
Yeah, but it's all the seats are good, and they're comfortable. And it was great. I loved going there.
I'll tell you what, that was the largest crowd we've ever played for. The first night we played was sold out. And so it's, I think 4,400, I think it was. And to your point, it's strange because it doesn't feel that big. Right. It's over twice the size of the Ryman. It just doesn't feel that big when you're on stage, but you can still fit 4,500 people in there. So there's not a bad seat in that house. It's a really, they were, I have to believe, I don't know the history of them building that, but I have to believe that was on purpose. That they probably tried to make it still feel intimate, much like the Ryman. Yeah, I'll tell you, it is, Emily said it best. After the first time we did it, she said, can they just have us back every night? Like, we don't ever have to play any other venue ever again. We'd just do the Opry, like Jeannie Seeley, who's done over 5,000 performances. We will gladly do that.
You're on board.
Totally on board.
So before we end here, I'm curious if we can get any scoops about what is next for the Shootouts in terms of recording. Do you have new songs you're working on?
It's funny you ask. We are. We have not started recording yet, and we really haven't even started honing in on the songs yet, but...
and I mean,
the conversation.
The new album still has a lot of
it just came out in February. Although when Bullseye came out in April of 21, Chuck Mead produced that record. We put it out, still during the pandemic times, more or less. But that came out end of April 2021, and by the end of May, a month later, we already had the plan to work with Ray Benson. And by September of that year, we were in the studio again. So it was a quick turnaround. I don't really want to do that quick of a turnaround this time again, because that was definitely a lot of stress, a lot of work going from one record to the next. And I'm to some point we will do that, I'm sure here. But I want to be pretty methodical about this. We're talking to a handful of different producers, some great folks. I had another. I can't believe it moment a few weeks ago, the same day that we played the Opry. I got to spend just shy of 2 hours with Rodney Crowell at his house, just one-on-one. And I was nervous about that, I'll tell you that, because he's one of my favorites, and he was so much fun, such a nice guy. And now I feel like we have a friend in Rodney Crowell, and he gave us some recommendations for folks to talk to, and kicking tires. We've talked to somebody in LA. Nashville. We're just trying to figure out where we want to go to do the next record, how we want to do it. I have kind of a plan in place what type of record we want to make. I'm kind of believing that we need to make a record that is very true to our mission statement.
Yeah.
And very true to who we are as a band, but also could maybe open the door a little bit sonically to maybe bring in some folks that we haven't been able to appeal to with the past records. We're never going to make a bro country record or any of that stuff, but anything like that. But I do believe there's a way that we could, make the same cake with slightly different icing. So we're trying to put those pieces together. It's been very busy lately. We've been talking to some management companies and just trying to figure out what's next here. But so far, everything's been good.
I think something that is probably a great situation for you and fortunate, but it's just the way things have turned out, is that you have. I'm just making a wild speculation here, but you've been doing this long enough now that I'm going to guess, are pretty savvy when it comes to dealing with management and things of that nature. Because a lot of people, that's where bands and artists get taken.
Get dinged all the time.
From day one.
From day one. And I'll tell you what, I mean, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, I definitely, now that we have starting to establish ourselves, it's very clear to me, at least, what we're good at and what we're not good at. And I think that any business owner, I don't care if you're a band or you're a bakery or whatever the hell you are, I think you need to know your weaknesses just as much as your strengths. I think that's how you grow, and it's the only way that you'll continue to build in a positive direction for your business, whatever you want to call it, is by knowing where your weaknesses are.
Yeah.
And so, that's been a big part of the conversation lately is, okay, here's the things that I know we're good at and that I know we've done well. Here's the things that I know that we need help with. And I think, finding the right people that we want to work with, it's going to be based on, not promises of grandeur. It's going to be, okay, I can help you with those areas where you need help.
Right.
So I mean, there's a lot of important conversations been had lately, and a lot of it has been based off of where we want to go and what we need to do to get there, and what things we can do better on our part as a band, or what we need help with. I am not above asking for help. I think there's a lot of artists or a lot of people just in general that get nervous or get afraid about asking for help, and
they're afraid it makes them vulnerable somehow. Maybe.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't understand that, and I mean I do understand it. I guess I get it. I understand it, but I've seen it work.
Yeah.
Where great relationships are formed by just saying, hey, you're good at this. Can you help us? Can you figure out, can we pay you? Can you help? Whatever it is, whatever the relationship looks like, it doesn't matter. But it's okay to ask for help.
Right.
And I've figured out times where I've had to ask for help, and it's been a good thing.
Right.
So I mean, we're gonna keep growing. I mean, we have no plans to slow down, and right now we're talking to different producers. That's kind of the next step, figuring out who we're gonna make the record with. I'm not worried about the songs, but we're kind of a collective as songwriters. So I think the songs will come pretty easily, and we've got some stuff in the archives even.
Yeah.
And then just connecting the dots. Like I said, we've been interviewing some management companies and such. So hoping that the next year and beyond is just continuing to grow every rung of the ladder at a time.
See, this next album will be Ryan's, album about songs on the road.
Probably,
yeah.
It's gonna be it's gonna be our The Wall.
See, Well, Ryan, it's been great having you on.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. When you
really
guys asked me
it.
to do this, I was honored. I mean, you guys are fixtures of the Akron music scene, and to have you guys, recognize what we're doing and want to chat with me, I was very honored. I appreciate it very much.
Oh, sure, it's been our pleasure.
Very much so.
Yes,
this is the beyond part.
So our guest has been Ryan Humbert, and it's been terrific. Him talking about his career and his band, the Shootouts. This has been From Akron and Beyond. I'm Bob Ethington with co-host Nick Nicholas, and we will see you next time.